Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to Early Childhood Chats, the podcast. So excited to be joined today by the LUME team all the way from St. Louis, Missouri. We are not going to talk baseball today. So as a lifelong Cubs fan, I already know what that's going to look like. But we are going to talk about some really awesome stuff that the LUME Institute has been doing, really focusing on social, emotional, the ecosystem, making sure that everybody is operating at their fullest potential. Everybody has the tools, the resources, the knowledge they need to thrive. Really looking at how LUME has been supporting our early childhood educators and families across the St. Louis metro region. So there is a lot to unpack here. I am super excited. I've had the pleasure of knowing these fine folks for several years now, and I'm honestly, I'm blown away at all the wonderful things that they've been doing. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. So let's sit back and get into it. And with that, let me pitch it over to Meghan. Meghan, if you could please introduce yourself, introduce LUME to everybody, and then we'll go around and have the rest of our team introduce themselves as well. So Meghan, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. We're really excited to be in the same space with you and chat. It's always a pleasure to reconnect with you every time we get the opportunity. But my name is Meghan Whitworth. I am the Senior Director here at LUME Institute, an organization that is run by a larger nonprofit called Youth in Need that is based in the suburbs and urban setting of St. Louis. But so LUME really is an organization that was created or born out of University City Children's Center, which is a care program here in the Del Mar area of St. Louis. And it really goes to the creator, right? Steve Roszak is the originator of the LUME philosophy, which is really centered in caring for children and having adults that understand development of children and then applying that within the organization. So when you come to UCCCC, you definitely get a different vibe or feel than you get in any other early childhood setting, because it's really about supporting and following children and supporting their autonomy, creating a loving environment that nurtures all of the people who are in it. And so Steve took that thought and that way of being and created LUME Institute, which is really meant to take that same way of being out into the world and sharing it with other educators and making sure that this way of living in an organization is multiplied across all early childhood settings, really, and making an impact at the systemic issue of care. So that's a good starting point for what LUME is. We'll dive deeper, I'm sure.
Wonderful. Well, I mean, you guys are doing so much. I kind of shared before, like, I don't want to pigeonhole you because you're such a dynamic organization. And, sometimes you just say, oh, they just do A or they do B. You guys are literally doing soup to nuts here. I mean, it's crazy. So very excited and super appreciative of you guys taking time out to be on the podcast today. Why don't we go around the table? Let's hear from everybody else. How about you say, hey, introduce yourself. What do you do? What's your background? All sorts of great stuff.
All right. Hi, Andy. It's Roxeanna Steiner. I'm an early childhood specialist and facilitator, coach. We kind of have a bunch of different titles, I guess, depending on what we're doing. My background is in home visiting for parents as teachers, but also working a lot with the Head Start programs and their home visiting programs. So that was probably the bulk of it, even specializing with those families who have special needs children and special abilities. And I came to LUME 11 years ago, and it just embedded in my spirit. I think that this message, this way of being, this understanding of the true emotional milestones is the foundation for a child, is for lifelong lasting, right? What happens early in life does impact the rest of a child's life into adulthood. And then just understanding that, reaching out to educators and leadership, that they need to understand that for themselves too, right? It's not just about the children, it's for the children, but it starts with us. And so that's what where my passion, I think, grew even more when I joined LUME, and continues to be inspired and grow. So yeah.
Hi, Andy. I'm Jason Mercer. Great stuff, and so glad to see you again. I think for us at LUME, for me, no matter what we do so much, right? And we're not pigeonholed in, and I think folks have experienced that already with us and working with us. But the most important part about it is the inside work, the inward work, and so that work comes from people, relationships and connections, and that's my passion and purpose in being with people and building relationships and connections, and letting them see what they've been through in life, maybe, and that shows through different work that we do, through coaching, through leadership work, but letting them figure that out and really walking along with them and working through those things. And so those are just a little snippet of some of the things we do. And so looking forward to more work like that.
Wonderful.
Hi,
And last but certainly not least.
Yeah, it's Amber Buchheit. I am also a facilitator, prisoner, early childhood specialist here at LUME with this amazing team. And previous to this, I have been with Youth in Need for the last 20 years. And so I worked on the Head Start side of things, doing a lot of things compliance and regulation related as their education person. And I went through my own coaching certification and journey, and through that process just realized that I wanted to rekindle my passion for working with adults and adult learners. And I think we've heard it said multiple times, but it was just through my own transformation, it became really clear to me that when adults are healthy and flourish, then children will thrive and flourish. And so, yeah, that's what brought me here.
Well, I love it. And again, thank you guys for being here. It's been great to see you and really watch you all grow over the last several years. They did some phenomenal work at a mental health conference we did, 2 years ago, maybe now. I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun, right? And the great thing, everybody will be down at the Head Start East Conference coming up here in March of 2026. And LUME will be putting on 6, I think it is, right? 6 sessions.
Yeah.
So a lot of great opportunities to really learn from these experts on everything from social emotional to how to engage in active listening to, ecosystems and kind of creating that culture. So many great topics you guys are putting on. So talk to us a little bit kind of about the day-to-day work. How does LUME really accomplish its mission? I know that, a lot of times we have our educators obviously in classroom, we have ratios that we have to keep. We don't always have the luxury of having, a tremendous amount of professional development time throughout the day or throughout the month. How do you really support those educators? How do you infuse kind of the whole LUME culture into the day-to-day operation with the constraints that we're under?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that within each organization that we work with looks a little different, right? Because there's different structures and different amounts of resources that folks have access to. So UCCCC is what we call our demonstration school. And so we do some onboarding of staff and support their learning and understanding of the LUME approach in that regard. And then, so an example of ways that we continue to nurture that is we did a full session with about 12 people, I think, last year. And through the fall, as we ended those sessions, it was almost 7 months in the making. Then we just started keeping in touch with the educators, right? Popping in, going into their environment instead of requiring them to come to ours, and really focusing on the bond that we created in our learning time together. It's simple things, right? Simple things of showing up and showing people that they matter. and that we care about them, and we truly are invested in their growth and development over time. And that goes a long way with folks. We hear many times from them that they wish it had never ended, and it doesn't have to. So we're planning on doing some touch points with them in the upcoming year, as well as starting a new cohort with some new staff in this next probably 6 months or so. But I'll let the others answer too a little bit about day to day, because it can look different from 1 week to the next.
Yeah, and I think that these cohort sessions or touch sessions that, professional learning opportunities and communities that we build, it really all over. We work with several organizations in Illinois. We went to Kansas City or Kansas area, and it really is about staying in touch, right? We've joined a newsletter recently, and we have a little LUME highlights in a newsletter, and emails, just email touches that just say we're still here for you, we're encouraging you, we are still connecting, and I think that's the key. It's about those continuing relationships to help people feel like they're not alone, and that the same struggles are really worldwide, and we all need to be in this together and for each other. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really, you're not onboarded and just thrown into a classroom, which you are, but yet you have 4 people here that will come and visit you and show you that you belong, along with we have coaches. And so along with those folks to support, right? And we're not forgetting about you, and we keep in touch. And I think also a piece that we're doing right now as well, working with other organizations within Youth in Need or Center, is we're doing some leadership work, really touching with or getting with those leaders and showing them that they can do these same things. And so not that they're maybe not doing it, but maybe again, doing their inward work to show that, hey, like there is a different way that we can do these things. And so really letting them see and really going from there and walking with them and how to do some of these things.
Well, your ears must have been burning yesterday, because we were talking. One of my friends had an issue. She has got some staff, and she's had some pretty heavy turnover, and just thinking about root cause, right? And we were just kind of flushing it out, and really, I think it's fair to say that even if you go to school, if you go get your associate's, bachelor's, whatever, in early childhood education, much like a lot of disciplines, there's a lot of stuff they don't prepare you for, right?
Right.
And as Jason mentioned, you kind of get thrown in because, hey, we need you here. We need a body. We need ratio. We need all these things. And I think this particular staff member that we were chatting about so the eyes weren't open from the onset. Like the education system, like, yeah, you got principles of learning and you got, this and that and everything else, milestones, but really day to day, what's it like in the classroom? How do you deal with these challenging behaviors? How do you regulate yourself? How do you find a moment when you're surrounded by a bunch of 2-year-olds and all these kind of things that are very real to most of our teachers? And, I was laughing. I said, well, it's kind of like, going back to my firefighter days, like if we can put the fire out before it starts, or at least catch it in the early incipient phase, we're doing a lot good, right? We don't want to wait till the whole building's on fire and then try to figure it out. But we had a pretty honest discussion about how like the teaching staff coming in isn't really prepared for maybe the environment they're going to work in. And then they get into the environment they work in, and there's really not, again, a lot of excess time, and in this one particular classroom, there was some very challenging behavior, which again is fairly common nowadays. So at the onset, you think, well, we got a pretty good ratio. I think this class had 10 kids and 2 teachers. Well, that sounds pretty good. But then it doesn't work if you have one child that's literally taking up a full adult's attention and time and effort for the most of the day. And it's very kind of unfair to the other children in the class and also the other adults in the class to try to now do 1 to 9. And I was laughing because I knew I was talking to you guys yesterday, And one of the things they talked about is, yeah, they brought in some training, they did some work, but as you're kind of already alluding to, like it's a 1 day, 1 or 2 hour training from a trainer you've never met before, and quite frankly, you'll never see again.
Right.
And in some ways, I almost thought, maybe that did more harm than good. And that's where I just keep going back to this LUME approach, where like it's not just a one and done; it's a relationship. It's, hey, we're here for you. We're here. We're actually in the classrooms where you work. We're in your building. You see us. We're real people. We'll come and visit you. We want to really be a part of the fabric of what you're doing day to day. And I got to say, and I don't want to speak for you all, but I seem to think that's a very effective way, and probably one of the major keys to your success, just that continued purposeful engagement, which takes time and effort, by the way, right?
It does. It
So,
does.
what do you think? Has there been some real success that you've seen, and some stories like that have kind of shown how this outcome really works?
Yeah, actually, and I'll let the rest of them talk about that data piece. But what kept coming up to me as you're talking was really helping educators, leadership, parents even, to really understand that emotional development, right? And those emotional milestones. And when a child is 4 years old, but he's really emotionally responding and reacting with behaviors as a 1-year-old, that's rooted in attachment, right? And so that's really where we need to start with that child. It's not about the disciplines and the strategies. We really need to understand that child more about what happened to them or what's suspected happened to them, rather than what's going on right now and what we need to do. And I think that's the approach work, is that we really dive into that and really seek to understand even the temperament. And we're going to be talking about attachment in Puerto Rico. We're going to talk about, filling those buckets. So you were talking about kind of being prepared, right? Or being proactive, but filling up those love and belonging and a sense of appropriate power within the whole culture of the organization or the classroom, so that folks or children, no matter where they come in and how they come in the morning and how bad their morning was, that they are in a safe place. They're in a place where they are loved and they are seen and they are valued, and then they can relax. And sometimes that's why when we see the behaviors the most, right, is like, oh, now I'm safe to show these behaviors, right? Because I know they're going to support me no matter what. And this is inside of me and it's got to come out. So really helping and supporting those educators to understand that piece, I think is just spot on to what you're alluding to.
And it's such a parallel, like we parallel, again, the way that we want educators and adults to be with children. Adults need other adults to be with them in those ways. And I think that is really a huge focus. You talked about like putting out the fires and how somebody comes in and tells or does hey, do this will work. And really it is we refer to it as a slow food process that comes from teaching to thinking. But they talk about the difference between slow food learning and fast food learning, and that things take time and you need them in doses, right? Little increments. And it's about, again, being with people. When we can better understand our own beliefs and behaviors and why we react or respond the way that we do, then that gives us the opportunity to reflect on how we respond differently with children.
I think something that I've noticed in my 20 plus years of being in early childhood, having been a Head Start teacher at right out the gate from college, is that I noticed and probably experienced a little myself until I did my own learning, is that we have educators who are walking around with their shoulders really tense because there's been this message given to us that we're supposed to control everything. And that if anything happens on our watch, it's all on us, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have a stressed system that is walking around looking for to the right and the left for any threat and really operating in a fight or flight mode, you get that. You get power struggles in classrooms because teachers just want children to comply because that makes everyone's life easier, including their own, because they don't have the other tools that are needed to really stop and look inward at like, how is this impacting me? How is what I'm receiving then being given back out in return? And so we're operating from the lower centers of our brain a lot of the time. And like Amber said, we all need support. And sometimes that looks like children breathe with me. We need to take a minute to just breathe together. I think the other thing that just happens pretty organically throughout, at least the United States, right? This is a generalized statement, but we're not really taught to have and or express all of our feelings. Nor are we able to name them a lot of the times. And so in our sessions, we do a lot of work around being able to identify core feelings and think about how it's energy that goes through our body, right? When we're happy, you can feel it. There's an internal sensation that you get around being happy. And unfortunately, that oftentimes is the only emotion that is allowable or given space. And there are all these other feelings that we go through too, right? There's moments of anger, there's moments of sadness, there's moments of anxiety, and there's lots of different shades of emotions. And it's really about being able to identify those and let the feeling go through our body. Let that reverberation happen, which takes about 90 seconds. So everything we do is based in brain science and really understanding. So you would ask earlier, what does a day in the life at LUME look like? And we're still learning. We're all learners. There's not one expert around this table. When we are leading sessions with others, we are gaining feedback and knowledge from those that are experiencing education today. And it's a back and forth, right? All learning happens in relationship. And so a lot of the times we're doing research. We're talking about, what book are you reading right now? Here's what I'm reading. Here's what I'm learning. So we're all in it together. But I see a lot of that happening in classrooms and experienced it a little bit myself when I had those big behaviors. Behavior is just communication. And so when a child is having a really intense feeling go through their body, they need somebody who can be with them in it and help them understand what it is and be able to name it. Because even as adults, we have a hard time naming our emotions because we weren't given space to do that. And that's what LUME is really about, is understanding that, understanding how attachment impacts that, and what we can offer children so that they don't have to learn a new way, but it just becomes what they're used to and how their brain is mapped for them.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense, quite frankly. And just, having that awareness, I suppose, is the first step so that you can start identifying some of this, right, Jason? I mean, if you don't know what to name it, I guess it's hard to deal with it, right? I mean,
if you name it, you can tame it.
There we go. See, I knew there was a good saying in there. I didn't know what it was. Because we do think about like what we would consider to be chronic stress or burnout or all these other, terms that keep coming up, self-healing and all this, right? But the bottom line is if you don't catch yourself, if you don't know what to look for, if you don't know the signs, and then if you don't know how to help yourself, you're just going to go on red. And once you're on red, an unregulated adult is not going to have a very easy time regulating kids, right? I mean, that's
where you get burnout, right? And it's happening in droves, quicker than you can hire a lot of the time. And it's not just yourself, you have to have partners in it too, right? And so that's why having a co-teacher that can read the signs and help you identify, like, oh, it looks like, why don't I tap in? Why don't, I do this while you take a beat? We have to do that in partnership with each other. Nobody, it's not human nature to be by themselves. We need community. We need others. Our brain is wired that way.
I think what also is unique about us is that we look at the organization as a whole system, and we have data to back all of that up, where we start with observations, right? And it's we use the child tool, which stands for climate. Shoot, I knew I'd do this. Regardless, but those observations are teacher and leadership inclusive, where it's all about the relationships in the classroom. It's about the transitions. It's not about how many blocks you have or how many, making sure you're following, guidelines and things like that. It's really about what is happening with the children, with the teachers, between the teachers in the classroom, and looking at that. And then we very beautifully side with and partner with the teachers to go over those results throughout the year several times, and so they are able to see that as a growth opportunity, and then to see some of the things that, we need to work better on, but they're able to observe that themselves, right? It's not a come in and checkbox thing. And then we use a lot of our pre and post surveys to really look at that reflective, the reflection part of the educator, and then as well as their own knowledge about child development and stuff. And then then they're experiencing along with us in our learning communities with them, and then continuing coaching with them, so that we can kind of debrief and unpack a little bit deeper in smaller groups or individually. And I think that's the stickiness. We found there was one group that they missed that opportunity to have that coaching in between the learning sessions, and it made a significant impact in their outcomes. And so what we did is we ended up going back to them and just doing coaching with them. And actually it was a Hispanic speaking organization and group of wonderful people in the Chicago area. And oh my gosh, we are still working with them, because this is what they need. They need to impact their stories. They need to tell their stories. They need to know that they're not isolated, and that these same issues are shared by others, and let's talk it out. Let's be in this together and talk it out.
Well, it sounds perfect. And I know, Jason, you've said it before, a lot of times what's measured is what's done, right? And we prioritize whatever it is, the mandate, the checklist, the requirements, the rules, the reporting stuff. We mandate all that, but we don't often, in that space, when we're, too busy doing all that stuff, we don't prioritize the communication, the collaboration, the connections, all those things that really strive to build out a great organizational culture, which I think in turn makes everybody feel a little bit better and feels like they belong, and probably reduces our turnover and all that kind of good stuff, right? So how have you been, working with the groups you work with to try to recognize, and we all have mandates. We all have amount of paperwork we got to fill out, and reporting requirements, and day-to-day stuff just is crazy. But how are we making that time for those meaningful connections and prioritizing that in this kind of new environment that we're all operating in?
Well, I love systems, Andy, it turns out. And I love looking at them and not really totally dismantling them, but how can we all walk through them, right? And walk together through them, because we have to do the mandates, right? I get it. Money is tied to different things, and it's the nature. It's what we have to do. But I think one thing that we don't have to do is that we don't have to forget about each other. And we don't have to forget about the connections and the relationships and the people. People are people. We're going to show up every day, like the teachers that we all know. They show up with their own baggage. Leaders show up with their own baggage, believe it or not. Like, leaders are not perfect. But they try to pretend to be perfect, like we do. We've all been leaders sitting around this table. And there is a certain expectation, right? That you're going to show up with all of it together. You're going to have it together. But we're all a part of the system of mandates and all of the things that we have to do. But I don't think we have to forget about each other and the relationships and the love. I think a lot of that's missing. I was listening to something this morning and it was so good, but it was, like, you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. How can we learn from them? We want you here. Like, you are a part of our tribe. Like, you are our team. We love you and we want you to be here and to learn from it. And so, yeah, I don't know that systems are going to get dismantled or go away. I would love to try. I am the advocate of probably just, like, making people see that we can flourish around tables like this and circles, and that we can all be one and the same, and we can make this happen, and we can be a great organization by doing that.
Well, and I've heard a lot of you, I think maybe all of you, say at one point in time, like, we look at some of those things that get in the way. And I think, again, each and every one of you have had a conversation with me over the years about ego.
Yeah.
That nasty little 3-letter word, right? Ego.
Yeah.
And kind of what that looks like and how really destructive that can be to an organization and morale and everything else. So when you're dealing with an organization that maybe has a person with a big ego at the top of it, how do you work around that? How do you satisfy that leader, that person that's kind of in charge, but also get them to realize it's what did you had a session a while ago? I think it was Amber or Megan. It's like from me to we or something like that, didn't you? I think you're doing one in Puerto Rico that's similar like that. Maybe it is that one. How do we deal with those leaders? Really, recognizing that people have egos, sometimes they're fragile egos, but we have to win the leadership over to have these kind of conversations. So that leadership buy-in is super important, of course.
Yeah, I think it goes to relationship, right? Leaders are human beings and they have a lot of responsibility. So a lot of the times the way in which we're told that we have to run things or be in charge of things is very similar to what I just said about classrooms, right? Around teachers feeling like they have to have all the answers and keep everything together instead of creating community. And so nothing that LUME does looks like do it this way, because that's not who we are. We live into the principles that the approach is all about. And so it's really about understanding the folks that are in the organization and have a role within the hierarchy. And so when we talk about dismantling systems, it's not about setting fire to anything necessarily. It's really about tapping into the why. Why are you here? What is your purpose? And just asking some questions to get to know people and understand what motivates them. And maybe what do they fear, right? What are their hopes and dreams, but what do they fear? Because it might be holding them back. And just having those kinds of conversations in relationship to turn a mirror on the individual so that they can see themselves and make choices around doing something different or doing something in what they would see as a better way. And so when we talk about leadership, Amber does a really good job of this, and maybe she should take this on, but talking about leadership as a verb instead of a position, right? Instead of a noun. And really thinking about how are you the center of gravity for the organization so that those who it's about being a steward leader, really, right? Is how can those in your care, not in your charge, but in your care, how can you see it in that way and recognize that every employee who comes to your organization has meaning and purpose? And can you tap into that? Can you see their strengths and help them navigate their path forward? And recognize also that they're people that have people who love them, that have children of their own, have families, right? They matter. They matter inside of work and outside of work. And so it's really about tapping into that and helping hear the stories of all who are a part of the organization, including those who are designated as leaders hierarchically. Ooh, that's a hard word to say.
That's a big word. Yeah. Don't play that on Scrabble. You'll blow me out of the water. What do you think, Amber? You want to add on to that?
Yeah, I can add. So I think one thing that I was thinking about just as we were talking about systems, I even think like there needs to be more space for systems thinking, professional learning, that's something that we don't often get or provide at an organizational level. And that's like, again, the knowledge piece, right? Having the knowledge of that and being able to see ourselves as part of the whole is just huge. And I think that really like the way that we do this with leaders, Meghan said so beautifully. And it is, again, it just comes back to that human-centered work that we do, and starting with the internal work of having, reflective practice of them being able to reflect themselves about their beliefs, their behaviors, and that when we can do that as an individual, that's when we can really start looking outward too and see how we fit and are a part of the whole. And then the other thing I was just thinking about is how important learning is for an entire organization, and how necessary it is to have a true culture of learning, and that means everybody learns and no one stops learning. And I think that is something we definitely want. We as a team practice and reflect and learn together. And so we want leaders to know that they get to be a part of that as well. And that doing that with their teams is so necessary to growth and change.
I'm curious, and you may not have an answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much does generational differences come into play? 'Cause, I mean, you've met my father. It's a different generation. I love him, but it's a different generation. And my younger sister, who's almost 20 years younger than me, she's from a different generation too. And I know a lot of the, folks that we have coming up now entering our early childhood workforce are from a different generation altogether. So how much does kind of that generational difference, cultures, norms, communication styles, do you see that a lot with your work?
Sure. I think you can see that probably in every part of society, right? I think it really comes down to valuing what each other has to offer. And so just because I've been in the field for 20 years doesn't mean that I know everything. And that there are probably some really cool things that I could be learning from those 20-somethings that are coming in, and vice versa, right? All along the continuum of generation, we have something to offer one another. And I think if we could value that a little bit more, instead of either being told or given messages that as you gain so many years, you are the all-knowing. I don't think that that's true. And so we have to tear down those walls a little bit.
Yeah, I even think as you were talking, I'm like, even just simply slowing down enough to understanding those generations, right? So I'm not much of a texter. But I am so much of a talker, right? Give me a conversation, sit down with me, and we will talk for hours. But texting, it's boy. And I think sometimes that could be construed that I'm being rude, right? If I'm just, short and sweet. And so I think that's a simple example, but it is about opening up those avenues of communication about how do you communicate, and those are upfront conversations when a person is onboarded even, and how do you like feedback? And, what's important to you, right? What are what's your passions? What's your why of even being here and in a part of this organization? And tell me about your family. Well, who's in your family? And, really getting to know that person on an individual basis. And I think can break down those walls a little bit too.
That made me think about one of the very first things we do in any group session that's going to be a long-term kind of learning engagement is we work with the folks in the room on identifying the commitments that they want to hold with and for each other. And so it's not just what do you need from the group, but also what are you willing to offer the group, and getting down to 4 or 5 commitments that the group can really use as a backbone to this is how we want to be in community with one another, especially in a learning community where we're talking about attachment and things that may have disrupted that in their own story, right? And so we're getting into some heavier things that we use ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences Index, in part of our sessions, and people have the choice to they can self-select what they share or don't share, but you have to have agreements or commitments that hold the community in a safe-ish, right, psychologically safe environment. But that really does speak to the generational piece too, because it gives people a signal of like, oh, okay, this is what others in the group need. And so I can step into or up to that because I care about those in my circle.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I've always been amazed at some of the commitments that people make. And quite frankly, some of them have caught me off guard. Like I wasn't even, and hopefully it doesn't make me a horrible person. I just wasn't thinking about that. So it's nice to put it in writing and get everybody on the same page at the onset. I do enjoy that, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are probably listening and saying, wow, this is awesome. Why doesn't my organization have a LUME? What are we doing wrong? This doesn't happen overnight. You guys are a product of many, many years of different partnerships and funding streams and organizational change and all sorts of stuff. Can you talk kind of holistically about, how you came to be, how you're working with organizations now, how other organizations can kind of embrace this model and or, work directly with you all?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the way the funding came about from LUME has been really a grassroots effort. And it still continues to be. So part of the day-to-day that you can see our team, mainly me, but I don't work in isolation either, right? Is that we are always looking for funding partners to support the work, and that changes from year to year, from month to month. And so one of the things that LUME is funded by is the Missouri Foundation for Health, which really spearheads our evaluation and research part of our organization. And so as we're building ecosystems that are focused on this social emotional wellness, we are measuring that. And we have 2 fine folks, Nikki and Lori, who aren't in the room today, but they are looking at the impact. They're measuring all of the engagements that we have to be able to take that forward in more of that systemic space for early childhood in a more overarching way of like, look, this work is important and we need to fund more of it. So there's still a long journey ahead of us for being able to take it to that higher state and national level. But in general, we are working with programs who have a desire to create a culture in which everyone matters, right? And so that looks like braiding funding a lot of the time. So it might be working with the Head Start program that puts some training and technical assistance dollars towards paying for LUME engagement, either the full caboodle, which is about 3 years worth of work, or those that want us to come in and do some professional learning, a couple of times just to get their toes wet, to us going to conferences like we're doing in March and coming to Puerto Rico. We try and get the word out and connect with as many educators on whatever level we can. But a lot of times that looks like accessing training and technical assistance, grant funding within the area or region that they are working in. And then we're also pulling from our local relationships in all of the different foundations around the St. Louis area that are engaged in and committed to seeing this work go forward. So we are also a Bezos Family Foundation grant awardee, and so we do a lot of work with that group on implementing Vroom, which is, and Roxeanna should really speak to that, but she's kind of been the lead person for a number of years with Vroom. But Vroom is an app that really helps adults who have a child in their life build connections with children. And so it's not an app that you give a child and let them, play it on your phone while you're doing other things. It's really about understanding that relationships are important and that all children really need are you. And so here are activities in your day-to-day, right? And so that pairs really well with the LUME approach. And so that's how we became a grantee under their work. And they really give us a lot of flexibility in ensuring that LUME goes forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I've gotten to work with them over the years. They're just doing some wonderful stuff, and
yeah,
great to see. I was a little fear that was going to go away for a while, but I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad it's still out there, and always exciting to see the new stuff that's coming out. For the data nerds out there, can you talk a little bit about kind of what your data's, what do you capture in? What's your data look like? What do you do an analysis on? I'm sure you've got a lot of interesting stuff. What have you been working on lately?
Yeah. Well, we don't have those experts in the room. We probably should. We're really looking at the growth of adults over time, right? And so one of the big things that we have done this past year is look at the educator reflective questions that we are asking folks at the beginning periodically through their interactions with us. It starts at the very beginning. But we've done a lot of work, actually, Nikki and Lori have done a lot of work in making that as manageable as possible because it was pretty lengthy. And so a lot of the year has been spent on making decisions around what is absolutely necessary to measure. But it all involves how are teachers growing? How is the LUME approach opening their internal growth? And how is that impacting the way in which they view or see or interact with the children in their classroom? And we're seeing a lot of gain in that.
We added Lori and Nikki added questions too for leadership that come from Devereaux and the Darrells and the Dars, and that is a piece I think that we're definitely seeing is that resiliency piece, and how, again, when leaders and educators go through a LUME engagement, what that looks like pre, and then what that looks like, I say at the end, but again, there's not really an end. Right. We just keep on reflecting and going with them. What else for data?
Part of, and Roxeanna mentioned it earlier, the CHILD tool, which stands for the Climate of Healthy Interactions for Learning and Development tool. It was created by Dr. Walter Gilliam and Ray's. I always forget the last one, I apologize for that. But it really is measuring the mental well-being or mental health and well-being of the environment. And we use that periodically through our longer term interactions too, not as an assessment like what most in Head Start are probably used to. It's really meant as a tool in a partnership with the educators to understand the environment and how they can use that data to move in their own growth, right? And so oftentimes Nikki and or Lori will meet with an organization to say, here's what it's telling us, right? Here's the information. And now what do you want to focus on? how do you want to use this data from a storytelling kind of framework to rewrite or edit your agency or organization's story going forward. So none of it is meant to be evaluative in the standpoint of good or bad, but just as an as is. This is where we are right now, and here's where we'd like to be. So yeah, we also use a lot of qualitative data,
Yes.
which is those that are participating in a LUME engagement tell us how it's working for them, or how it's not, and what they'd like to see more of. And so those are probably the most powerful pieces of data that we have, is the snippets from those that are actually engaging in it. Because it's really hard to tell people what it's like or what LUME is, because it's so personal.
Yeah.
And I think that getting those qualitative and what is one thing or two things that you want to take away from today's session, right? Makes it so easy for educators to take that. We spoke of that earlier. It's not a one and done, but when I had this experience, now I'm going to write down two things that are really standing out to me that I want to research a little bit more of, or I want to think about more, or I want to put into practice. I'm going to start acting on this. And then when we get back together the next time, we ask them, how did it go? And then they're writing their comment about how it went. Even if it is totally didn't have time to do it, right? I'm still working on it. But that's their own, it almost becomes their own little journal of growth that they are able to walk away with. Plus it's good information for us to see, what's sticking and what is, what's not. And it's so beautiful because they're all unique and everyone is walking away with something that they truly need and desire. It's not just all, I guess one answer response, right? It really is. People, I think, take it very personally and see it as an opportunity. So,
All right, rapid fire here. If you're a teacher and you're in a classroom, you're struggling, and you're saying to yourself, "Gosh, I wish I had LUME to come to my organization and help out." I'm curious, around the table, what's one piece of advice you would give to that teacher who is struggling day to day, doesn't feel like they're supported, on the verge of maybe even getting out of the profession and doing something different? What piece of advice would you give them?
Communicate early and often, as much as you possibly can. Find someone. If it's a co-teacher, a leader, find someone to talk to. Start to set yourself up to not be burnt out and to not even try to not get to that point. The more support that you can get and the more that you can involve yourself in the relationships and connections with others, the better you'll be.
I would say know that you matter and that the work that you are doing is hard and important, and take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you're not alone. Open the door first, because if you tell your story, somebody else is going to tell theirs, and you can only go up from there.
Yeah, that was so I'll sum it up. It was the first word that popped into my head was vulnerability. And so often that's hard and it's got a bad rap. But that vulnerability is what opens up the door to others, to communication, to just connecting and taking care of yourself and saying what you need in the moment. So to trust yourself, right? Trust your own heart, trust your own knowledge, and be vulnerable with safe people. So.
All right, let's do one more. How about if I'm a leader of an organization and I have got some really bad turnover issues and I just don't know what to do. My budget's limited. I'm kind of out of ideas. Any thought? Oh, you got it, Amber? All right. Any thoughts on where I can start?
Call us, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at LUME Institute. No, that was silly.
No. Yeah. No, I think she says that in joke, but it is. I think
true.
that, our Facebook and stuff is more encouraging. I met with the person that posts for us yesterday, and she's like, everything's just so encouraging and uplifting. And I'm like, yeah, that's us though, right? And so just for that little bit of encouragement and to know that it's happening everywhere. That's the same story we are hearing literally nationwide. And don't give up. Don't give up. Going back to what Jason said, connect, because it's the foundation of the relationships with those that you have right now, and asking for their input. Right? What can we do better? It goes back to the systems. How do we create a community that welcomes new teachers in better, right? So that we can reduce turnover.
Leadership is isolating, right? It can be.
Yeah.
It really is. And there are a lot of leaders out there that have found themselves in a leadership position simply by just being at the right place at the right time, right? Or you are a great teacher, and so because you're a great teacher, you're going to be a great leader, and that's not always true. And so, but that does happen. But it can be isolating, and just to know that the things that you're going through, and that we've all experienced it as well as leaders, that you're not alone, and you don't have to shoulder all of that on your own, even though you may think you have to, but it does feel that way. And that doesn't help either by me just saying that. But it takes work, and it takes time, and it takes surrounding yourself with people that love you and that care about you and that want to connect.
Yeah. I would tell a leader that is facing that, which I think most are. It would be very rare to have an organization that has every single position staffed at all times, right? And so I would remind them to talk with the people that are there. Ask them why they stay and what they can do more of to make that happen. And spend time with the kids. Make sure that you're centering yourself on your why and what makes you get up and out of bed every day and come to work. That will go a long way, even a minute or 2 minutes. It does not have to be a long amount of time, but connection is key. And so connect with those that are around you in your buildings and realize that you don't have to have all the answers, and that there are really knowledgeable people around you that you have put in position that might have some answers for you. So ask them what they need, ask them what they think.
And connect with yourself and
right.
your own learning too. Like, be a learner and know that you deserve that.
And it's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. So we did the teacher, we did the leader. How about the student? Someone in a classroom right now saying, gosh, I want to get into early childhood education. What's one thing that they should know or be aware of or eyes wide open on getting into this field?
That's a really good question. We need you.
We need
But I would also,
we need you.
yeah, I would add to that it be prepared for the journey. It's a journey. It is, but you will grow so much from the beginning unto the end, or unless you have infinite mindset, right? That there is no end. That you will continually to learn something new every day and grow and hopefully blossom into something that's just unbelievable that will change the world.
That's
I
good.
think focusing on that purpose, similar to talking about why with leaders, I think you mentioned at the very beginning, Andy, that what we get before we dive in isn't always the reality or the full picture of what it actually looks like. And so I think that centering people on their why and their purpose is helpful.
Yeah. Make sure you're going about it for the right reasons, right? Truly get into the career because it's really truly what you want, and that there's purpose behind it, like Amber said. I think something that we haven't touched on that is really important for your listeners to hear, especially those in positions where they can offer something to those in their care, like we mentioned earlier, is play. Play is the antidote to stress. And so play looks like a lot of different things, right, as adults, but give yourself permission as an individual to understand your play personality. Maybe that's creation. For me, it's baking. It's creating charcuterie boards because I think it's an art form. You can disagree, but things like that. It doesn't have to look like silly and embarrassing. It can look like a lot of different things. Maybe you like to canoe and you haven't been on a canoe in 6 months because you've been at work. Carve out some time to go play. Play as a team. Find ways that you can do creative things that don't take a lot of time or energy, and that can sustain themselves, because play, like I said, is the antidote to stress.
Yeah, I have actually it happened here at University City Children's Center, where one afternoon all of the classrooms gathered together and put on a dance party. And that was so relieving for teachers, you felt the joyful and energy from everyone and the children, and just letting it go. And the leader, as introverted as she was, she joined in, and I think that's just healing, right? Yeah.
Well, we're going to do a lot of dancing in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
We're going to have some great food. We're going to have some great adult beverages. And we're also going to have a karaoke contest. So, just saying, bring your singing voice.
I had a dream, Andy, that Roxeanna sang karaoke in Puerto Rico.
Oh, well, dreams come true. I don't know what to tell you.
No coincidences.
Making dreams come true.
What song was she singing in this dream? Do you know? Or?
You want to know what she was singing?
Oh, no.
It was Michael Jackson. Pretty young thing. PYT. She was singing PYT to everyone.
I'll make sure the DJ has that in his repertoire then. We'll
Yes.
for you guys.
Okay. I'll send you a playlist.
Good. Every time I try, they say, you should sing solo. I said, oh, that's nice. They go, no, solo, we can't hear you. I said, oh, that old man. Well, it is going to be a hoot. I'm excited to see you guys in person. I appreciate all your time. And honestly, I appreciate all the work you're doing. You guys are moving mountains out there. And it's just so fascinating to check in with you guys and see what you're up to. Thank you for all the work you do on a daily basis. Anything you're looking forward to in Puerto Rico? Or I guess what is the biggest thing you're looking forward to when we come down to the island?
I'm going to say the food, because I experienced some amazing food that I'm so excited about going back to. So food and the beach.
Connection.
Connection.
It's always so nice to connect with everyone. And thank you, Andy, too, for all the work that you're doing.
I try. I think my 2-year-old and almost 5-year-old, they put up with me, and my wife, of course, too. Excited. The mofongo is mofongo is going to be great. I'm excited to get some good mofongo in Puerto Rico and see everybody again. We've got I was just looking. Since we've been recording this podcast, we've got more registrations pouring in. So we've got folks from over 27 states coming. It's going to be a real hoot. And I think, as Megan just mentioned, there's value in connecting. There's value in this in person. I learn a lot of stuff in the sessions, but quite frankly, I learn maybe just as much or maybe even more at these breaks and networking with everybody and talking about leading practices and what your agencies are up to. So it's really exciting. I hope you can join us down in Puerto Rico, headstarteast.org, if you want to get more information on that. I will give you guys the last word here. If folks want to learn more about LUME, if they want to follow you, I know your Instagram is a great source of uplifting material, but what's the best way to see what you guys are up to?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. LUMEinstitute.org is our website, and you can reach out. We'd love to meet you and talk to you and see how we might be able to support you and or your organizations.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't miss Roxanne's debut, the karaoke queen.
That's right.
We've got the DJ queuing up Michael Jackson as we speak.
I love it.
It should be a great time. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast and sharing all your expertise. And of course, thank you for listening to us. We hope you found this entertaining and useful. They're doing some wonderful things down in St. Louis area. And I would encourage you to look them up and pick their brains. And also, if you see them at the conference, don't be shy. They're a very friendly group. They're from the Midwest, so they've got that going for them as well. But I'm going to hit the stop button, say thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode of Early Childhood Chats. For now, this is Andy Roszak saying thank you very much. We'll talk to you again very soon.